Welcome to the 23rd episode of my Sanibel Chronicles. I'm Charles LeBuff, and today I'll be sharing some more Sanibel information. In fact, the next two episodes will deal with two elements that are of historical significance to Sanibel Island, two trajectories that changed the future of the island. The first episode for October, this being October 2nd, will be on the Sanibel Causeway. It was once a heated topic in the communities of Sanibel Captiva, as the Lee County Board of County Commissioners, sitting over in Lee County, decided they wanted to build a bridge from Punta Rassa to Sanibel Island. You have to bear in mind that it was sort of a pursuit of jealousy. The Charlotte County Commission up in Punta Gorda had the Boca Grande Causeway under construction when the Sanibel Causeway discussion really got serious in about 1958. But the Lee County Commission announced they would develop engineering studies and plans to build a causeway from Punta Rassa on the mainland to the eastern end of Sanibel. At that time, the residents of Sanibel were somewhere in the neighborhood of 400 people. I registered to vote the first time in February 1960, and I was, I believe, the 105th registered voter on the Sanibel rolls. I was registered by Francis Bailey in the old Bailey's General Store that at the time was located on the bay and has since been moved to the Sanibel Historical Village. That's a fond memory. My first time ever voting was in the presidential election 1960, and I've never failed to vote. I've not missed one. I've never always voted for a winner, and I've voted for some losers. So we're approaching another election, and we'll see what happens. Before the bridge was being considered, Sanibel had a ferry service. We had 4 ferries that ran on schedule between Punta Rassa and Sanibel. The ferry landing was located about a half mile roughly to the west of the Sanibel Lighthouse on the bay side. And this is a photograph of one of the early wooden hull ferries, the Islander. Well, when the idea for a causeway first was publicized, most of the islanders that I associated with went up in arms against construction of a bridge. They just didn't want the island despoiled by wide open traffic, and wanted to maintain the quaint identity of the barrier islands. At the time, I was president of the Sanibel Captiva Audubon Society, and our board unanimously voted to work against construction of a causeway. And one of our board members, named Willis Combs, became the head of a group that was dedicated to combating construction of a causeway to Sanibel. And over time, the battles continued, and the court cases came and went, but in the end, the Lee County Commission had pretty fairly won out. It seemed that we were going to have a causeway to the island whether we liked it or not. And I had some input into the finality of the decision. Under the permitting process, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers would make the final ruling on whether a permit for construction would be approved. And one of the tests that the county had to go through was a biological ascertainment of environmental damage to the waters of San Carlos Bay and Pine Island Sound. At that time, we had a oyster and scallop fishery where both shellfish were taken. And of course, those waters were productive areas for both sport fishing and commercial fisheries. So the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service had to develop a proposition on their findings on what implications a causeway would have on those local waters. And the person assigned to conduct those studies, his name was Arthur Marshall. He was head of the Fish and Wildlife Service's river basins over at Vero Beach. So Art and some of his staff came over. They came to the lighthouse where I lived. They stayed in a small cottage that was at the refuge headquarters at the former U.S. Coast Guard light station, and bivouacked there during their short-term study. And I was assigned to assist in the project, which entailed water collection, seining species in that water column, and doing some tidal speed work at the point where the old Coast Guard pier was located. We did these studies, and Art determined that the construction of a causeway to Sanibel would degrade the environment. It would potentially destroy the scallop and do serious damage to other fisheries, and decided to request that the Corps of Engineers decline approval of the causeway. So this report was finalized, and the final permit meeting was held in Jacksonville at the Corps of Engineers headquarters, and the County Commission engineers, and I believe a couple of the County Commission attended that meeting, as did Art Marshall and his lead biologist. And it was the result of his study that Art suggested that the Fish and Wildlife Service would not object to a causeway to Sanibel to be built by the Lee County Commission, but they recommended that the entire roadway be elevated on pilings. There be no dredge and fill operations to build the causeway. And by being elevated for its entire length, the causeway structure would not impede tidal flow, alter salinities, and cause the demise of important local fisheries. The Lee County Commission representatives at the meeting cried foul. They cried they could not afford to build the roadway in such a design, and pleaded with the Corps of Engineers to issue the permit. The Corps of Engineers made an about face and agreed with the county, and the permit was issued. And the Sanibel Causeway went ahead on schedule. I expected to do this all in one episode, but I think I'll add a couple of other episodes this month to tell the story in its totality. But I want to address one element of what I said a few moments ago. A few months ago, I wrote an opinion letter that was published in the Fort Myers News Press. And of course, it was directed toward our esteemed Board of County Commissioners in Fort Myers. But like most good suggestions, it fell on deaf ears. For those of us who had suffered through Ian and had seen the drastic impact that storm had on the construction of the Sanibel Causeway, I raised the issue of why in the hell Lee County, pushed by the Florida government, went about repairs as they did and just completely forgot about those spoil islands and elevate the entire roadway as was originally suggested by Art Marshall so many years ago, and make the causeway safer, less expensive to upkeep when future hurricanes as serious or more serious than Ian impact Southwest Florida. It was really a no-brainer, but it's beyond their comprehension on the way to move. And that's my firm opinion. I'm just sharing it with you. You can look at it any way you like, but that's a fact, a logical consideration to complete a causeway that will last into close to the next century when it all has to be done over again. So with that, I'll end my tirade and welcome you to subscribe to my channel. We did gain some new subscribers since episode 22, and I appreciate you joining with us. I'm not always as outspoken as I have been today, but it just it irks me at the foolish mindset that these local politicians have. They don't know how to get to a reasonable endpoint. All they want to do is spend money. With that, I'll leave you and welcome your subscription. Thank you very much.